Hey everybody, it's Derek Christensen coming at you from Legion Law. I'm talking to you today about probate, the very exciting topic of probate. So before I dive into that, I wanted to let you know how you can reach out to me. You can find me on my website, legionlawpllc.com, or you can email me directly, Derek, D-E-R-E-K, at legionlawpllc.com. So with that, let's dive right in. So in Texas, there are many different types of probate. Now, you can view this as a pro, you can view this as a con, but at the end of the day, it is what it is. The Texas legislature created many different types of probate to make sure that different situations can be addressed quickly. Some people have a lot of stuff when they pass away, and you want to have a very complex probate. Other people have a very simple estate with just a house and maybe some bank accounts. That's about it. So the legislature, in their good intentions, decided to create multiple types of probate. So here we are. We're going to dive into at least 4 different types of the most common probates in Texas. So the first one is called probate of a will and issuance of letters testamentary. What that simply means is you died with a will, you need to make sure it's validated before a judge, and the judge will issue letters testamentary, which is a document that says whoever's in charge of the will is in charge of the estate and can gather all the estate's assets. That's pretty much it. It's used most commonly when there is a will, when there's a moderate estate, whenever people have bank accounts, stocks, cars, you name it. A normal person in a normal estate usually will be in this situation. And it's pretty, it takes about 6 months, 6 to 18 months, depending on how complex it can get. But the only complexity that really occurs is, whenever creditors need to get paid off. So sometimes creditors will want their money up front. Sometimes they want to get paid, with the new person who owns the new real estate. Whatever it is, you're gonna have to negotiate and talk with them. And sometimes that takes a long time. Sometimes it's very short, depending on how many creditors and what they want to do. So that's the first type of probate is probate for, it's a mouthful, probate to admit the will and issue letters testamentary. So the second is dependent administration. So in this situation, it's where there is no will. Somebody died without a will, they died what's called intestate. And that means that you don't have a will and you need to determine who are the heirs and who can administer the estate, who can make sure that everything happens according to what the default laws of Texas state. So this is kind of a crummy situation. It's not ideal. It's complex. It takes a lot of work. Unfortunately, the complexity of the situation is such that attorneys have to file multiple filings. You have to constantly be sending letters to people, sending emails, getting signatures. It is a nightmare and a half. And, this is why I tell people having a will at all is better than nothing. Because at the end of the day, dependent administration, where you're trying to determine the heirs and you're trying to determine who can administer the estate, it's no fun. It's no fun whatsoever. So my recommendation is just get a will and then you avoid this entirely. But if you don't, then in this circumstance, you're going to be stuck for quite longer than just 6 months. And it's going to be much more expensive than normal administration or normal probate. And that's not good. That's not good at all. And that's why probate is such a, crappy situation to be in. You don't want to be in probate. And specifically, you don't want to be in dependent administration. So that's the second type of probate, which is pretty common because many people die without wills. The third type of probate is called Muniment of Title. And this is actually kind of a unique Texas one. Not too many people know about it, but essentially Muniment of Title is where somebody has a will, but their estate is pretty simple. It's just a house and some bank accounts, and that's pretty much it. There are no debts other than maybe on the real estate. And there are, there are no stocks. There's no other parties holding assets in your name. Nothing like that. It's just house and bank account and maybe a car or two, And that's how some people find themselves, and that's totally fine. But thankfully in Texas, there's this process, Muniment of Title, which makes it pretty simple. You just file an application You go through a couple more procedures, but the procedures are much less than if you were going to go through the previous two types of probate I just mentioned. So that's nice, and usually it's cheaper, usually it's faster. The cons of it, though, is that it's unique to Texas. So some multi-state companies, title companies, banks, or whatever, they may say, we don't recognize this type of probate. We don't understand what's going on here. We're not going to recognize. You need to go through normal probate. So that's a real risk you run if you try to do Muniment of Title. You might pay attorney's fees and go through the song and dance just at the end of it all for the title company or the bank account to say, no, we don't recognize that. You need to go through it again. So that's a big concern, and you want to make sure that you should almost coordinate with your third parties beforehand and say, hey, do you accept Muniment of Titles before doing Muniment of Title? Because again, you don't want to do two different probates. That's just not fun. I mean, probate in the first place isn't very fun. So doing it twice is not an enviable position to be in. And then the last one is called a small estate affidavit. So again, there are multiple types of probate, and more than just these four, but small estate affidavit is used whenever it's kind of complex, but you can calculate how much the estate is worth in Texas law. There's the homestead, which is ignored. There's some exempt property, which is a different discussion for a different time, but it's like, your car, some goats, sheep, your Bible, stuff like that, random stuff. So you take your homestead, you take your exempt property, you ignore all that. Anything past that, if it's $75,000 or less, then you can file a small estate affidavit, and that simply states, hey, we don't own much, we just want to get through this really quickly. And usually you just file this affidavit, you go through a couple more procedural things, but it's, again, way less stuff than before, where you have to send all these notices to creditors and unsecured and secured creditors and all that stuff. So the small estate affidavit is great because it's faster, it's cheaper, and it is for people who have small estates, who don't have much to their name whenever they pass away. But it is a negative in the fact that, in the future you might find out, oh, well, we thought we had a small estate, but it turns out Uncle John, who died, he had $300,000 worth of gold in a vault somewhere. And now that we need to access it, we need to go through probate again, because it's not a small estate anymore because there's so much gold. So again, you run the risk of going through probate a second time. And again, some third parties don't recognize it because it's relatively unique to Texas. Most states have some kind of variation of a small estate affidavit, but at the end of the day, it's complex stuff. You want to make sure you're doing it right. And so those are the four main types of probate. It's not easy, it's not fun, and it is not ideal for most people. But at the end of the day, most people are going to find themselves in probate because they don't set up a trust correctly and they don't fund the trust and all that good stuff. So if you want to avoid probate and you don't even want to talk about these four things, more power to you. I totally agree with you, and I can help you with that. And if you are in probate and you're dealing with these problems and there are concerns about what type of probate do you want to go through and what's the most efficient way and blah, 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 then I can help you with that as well. I do both situations. So estate planning, if you do it correctly, you'll avoid it entirely. And if you don't, then, you find yourself in this circumstance and everybody's going to pass away. So eventually everybody runs into this problem. So I would argue it's great to address it now, and I'd be more than happy to help you out with that if you want. So again, reach out to me on my website, www.legionlawpllc.com, or you can find me, or you can email me directly, Derek, DEREK, at legionlawpllc.com. So thanks so much, and I'll catch you guys on the next one.